We're also working on something that we call Vail upgrades, and this is our voluntary airport low emission program. We will be replacing some of the ground power units at gates with electric units. So these are the units that we use, so that way aircraft don't have to idle at the gate to keep them cool. If you've flown recently, they always say, make sure you close the window shades before you exit the aircraft to help keep it cool. That we do cool them using these ground power units when they're on the ground. We're expecting installation by the end of August. And it will, of course, help us meet our sustainability goals in terms of air emission and noise pollution. And if you happen to have the fortune to travel during the CrowdStrike incident, this is an actual picture from the Boise airport. Our teams did, I think, exceptionally well. Our airline partners, I should say, it wasn't an airport issue, but our team did do what they can to help ease in that situation. It was system-wide, it was a worldwide issue, but it certainly impacted us here in Boise. So we thought that it was worth noting. More exciting and more fun than CrowdStrike, we have Sun Country. We welcome them to Boise with service to Minneapolis. They started in June and they will actually just be ending here shortly. But early reports are that the service was very well received. Sun Country was pleased with the service here. So I'm hopeful that we will see it return next year as they start planning their schedules for the next year. And hopefully you saw this as well. This is very exciting news for the airport and for the region. Particularly nonstop service to Orlando and Bozeman, 2 more nonstop destinations. So 28 nonstop destinations from our community, including Orlando, which is in our top 20. We now have nonstop service to 19 out of 20 of our top destinations. The only one we don't have yet is Hawaii. So Honolulu, here we come. We'll see about that. But in the meantime, we'll be super grateful to have these, not only the new destinations, but additional frequencies. So Alaska will begin flowing passengers over Boise as well from some of these other northern airports. So like Spokane, Lewiston, Bozeman, to these other destinations. So we're really excited to see Alaska continue their focus on Boise. You may have noticed when you came in this morning, if you came through the second floor rotunda, we have a TSA pre-check enrollment with Clear. So we're expanding our partnership with Clear. They are operating in one of our checkpoint lanes for expedited security screening. And now they will be doing pre-check enrollment at the airport. We've talked quite a bit about the cell phone waiting area. We are in the process of relocating that to a larger, more comfortable parking lot where we actually have dedicated spaces. This will be over adjacent to the economy lot. We will have the ability to expand it as needed by moving barricades and also leveraging existing infrastructure that's over there. It takes about 5 to 7 minutes to get from that lot to the gate, which coincidentally is about how long it takes a passenger when they deplane to get to the curb. So we think that it'll be a good use of the space and will be a safety enhancement and improvement from the service that we have today. It will be free. We don't have an exact timeline for that, but we're saying coming this fall. And I almost feel like this is old news because it's been a couple of months, but we're so excited about our new concession contracts that were awarded by council in early June, just after our last commission meeting, I believe. We have a number of new concepts that are coming to the airport, including Bardnay will stay, but we're also adding an additional kiosk concession in the middle of the food court there where that artwork is. That will be the still and waffle me up.
Starbucks.
We were adding the Starbucks. I told the commission, you remember, and every single one of you said Starbucks, please. But we're also bringing in Flying M, and we're also bringing in Form and Function. So whether you like local coffee or national coffee, yes, you can get that here. this airport. So, and our River City, marketplace is gonna be changing over to the Capital City public market, so that will be completely redesigned, and then we'll be adding vending out on Concourse B and replacing that huge kiosk, so we have a little more room, but also so we have items available 24/7 for the traveling public. And also in June, we awarded our contract to Fentress Architects for the design of the new concourse, as well as redesigning B and looking at all of the other impacts that that will have on our airport. So we had a kickoff meeting with them. So that's moving forward. We also have an RFP out right now for what we're calling an owner's representative. So that will be someone who helps us manage the project and can serve as a go-between between the contractor and the owner and the architect, and he has done this type of work in other places. So we'll bring their expertise to our team. And then we're expecting to issue the construction contract for a construction manager at risk again this fall. And the idea is to bring them in as soon as possible so they can have input and advice into the design. So that way we don't design something that's not buildable. So those will continue to move forward. I did want to update on the Jackson Jet Center hangar. I know that this has been front of mind for everyone in our community. It's certainly been on the headlines, and our thoughts have been with the Jacksons and with obviously the workers who were there and those who lost their lives. So the OSHA report did come out this month. Again, it has made substantial headlines. Again, it's not our project, but it is on the airport property. And so it is something that we're continuing to monitor. The new hangar will begin construction again, hopefully this fall. And I don't have a completion date yet, but I did want to at least touch on this for commission because I suspect you're probably being asked about it. Moving off the airport proper, we're moving into the non-aeronautical development. We have a couple of projects that are under construction today, including what's called the Whitecap Build to Suit. Whitecap is an electrical supply company. So this is over off of Victory Road. This is on our non-aeronautical development. This is part of our master developer agreement with Adler Construction. And they are also building a spec building that can accommodate up to 6 tenants. So those are currently under construction and in process. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we had an employee appreciation event. It's not very often that you see employees who've been with the company for 25 plus years. So Michelle, who you all know and we all love, she's been with us for 25 years, hard to believe. And then Mary Boatman, who is one of our custodial supervisors, you know, she's been with us for 30 years. And we all know that that is not an easy job. So I wanted to take a minute to recognize them for their years of service. But you can see we have a number of people who've been with us. You can see it on my screen, but 15 years, 10 years. So. Brandon, no, it's not mixing. We're gonna have to look at Michelle for the rest of the. All right. So we also had a number of promotions. We promoted Scott Sundquist to supervisor of our airfield maintenance team. And we have a number of maintenance mechanic leads that we've just promoted. We are working on creating career pathways for our team members. So that way they have opportunities for advancements and segmenting basically the positions from our most junior who we've just hired to our more senior employees who have multiple years of experience in differentiating to recognize them for their years of service and experience. So we've just promoted a number of maintenance leads as well. So we were off to a slow but steady start at the beginning of the year. I'm happy to say that that has changed. It's just full speed ahead all the time now. In May, enplanements were up 8% over the previous year. June, enplanements were up over 7% over the previous year. I suspect we don't have the official numbers for July yet because we're very early into August and the airlines haven't reported the numbers to us, but I expect numbers will be up for July as well. So this brings our total for year to date. Passenger counts are up 3% year to date. And then a number of things here in our revenues. You can see that revenues are up 30% overall. Couple of notes, our parking lot revenue is up because of increased availability in parking and more parkers. Both our signatory airline rent and our terminal rent are up because of our adjustments to our airline use and lease agreement that we made last year. Concessions rent is up in part because of more passengers going through, but also because we received an airport concessions relief grant, airport concessions relief grant that we received based on COVID that just came in. Landings in terms of freight, that's also part of our airline use and lease agreement adjustments, as well as additional landings. And then retail, same thing, the airport relief grant, and then advertising, same thing, airport relief grant. So those are the substantial changes in that particular one. Operating expenses are up about 20%, so they're up, but not up as much as revenues, which is always good. We're seeing increases in personnel because of increased in salaries, but also because of the increases in adding staff. The indirect cost reimbursement is because of the way that the city allocates costs. And when we had our FAA audit, FAA went back and audited several years where we hadn't paid the right amount. So that came out. Police and fire services are up substantially because of the renegotiated contract. And then fleet is up because of the number of equipment or the pieces of equipment that we have in fleet. And then credit card fees, the increase is due to increased usage. And then the power is actually due to the implementing if power upgrades, which we've been receiving incentive checks, or excuse me, the decrease because we've installed efficient equipment. So we're using less power. And also we're being reimbursed by Idaho Power with their efficiency program for making these improvements to our infrastructure. So that line item has gone down as well. So I'll move into our air service marketing report that we get quarterly from our consultant. You can see our top 20 remains relatively stable. Again, the only one that we don't have nonstop service to is Honolulu.
That chart.
Oh,
So tiny.
it is pretty tiny. Let's see if I can blow it up here. It's a little bit of an eye chart. I can read it to you. So our top destinations are Seattle, Las Vegas, Phoenix, Portland, Denver, San Diego, Los Angeles, Sacramento, Orange County, Spokane, San Francisco, Oakland, Burbank, Salt Lake, Orlando, Dallas, San Jose, Chicago, Honolulu, and Minneapolis. So, and I don't think that the detail is really substantial. I think the key is what are our top markets and then how do they move within that, and whether or not we're seeing increases in those passengers or not. So. Capacity trends, capacity continues and load factor continues to be strong. Capacity was up 1%, so, and passengers were up 3%. So we actually had an increased load factor. 85% is very respectable within the industry. Market share is very competitive in the Boise market, and we actually saw Southwest gain and be our primary market leader over Alaska. by 0.1%. So we'll look forward to seeing what Southwest wants to do now that Alaska has added all that capacity into our market starting in December, but the point is it's very, very competitive between Southwest, Alaska, and Delta. And then when you look at our forward-looking schedule, hopefully you can see that. You know. So basically this looks at future capacity. And we're looking at the number of flights and the number of seats available in our market for the next 6 months. And in every month, we see an increase in flights and an increase in seats. They somewhat correlate. It just kind of depends. But we're expecting what's really important to us. Obviously, flights are important because airlines pay landing fees. But what's really important from a capacity perspective is the number of seats. So we'll see seats increase 9% in August, 3% in September, 5% in October, 7% in November, and then in December, when we see the new Alaska flights come online, seats will go up 16%. And right now in January, seats are projected to be 20% more than what we had in January of 24. So a very substantial increase. And then when you look at our seats per capita, again, this compares the number of seats that we have available to the number of seats in our market. We have more seats than most everyone in our market, with the exceptions of Spokane, Charleston, and Reno. And our seats per capita actually decreased slightly. I think mostly because the seats have been steady in the first part of the year, and our population has grown. This shows in a glance how our airfare compares to, and how our enplanements compare to our peer group. So Charleston is the only airport in our peer group that has more passengers than us. If you remember when we selected this peer group, probably several years ago now, we were kind of squarely in the middle of the pack. And now we're the only one who has more passengers than us is Charleston. And then our airfare continues to be very competitive with the third lowest average airfare. And then year over year comparisons, again, same peer group. And the key things that I like to look at this are how we compare in the number of nonstop destinations, and then whether or not that has increased or decreased. So in Boise, we had one less. And then when you look at the number of nonstop destinations, we look pretty favorable compared to our peers. You know, Reno has 23 there, probably closest to us, both in terms of geography and size. And Spokane, same thing, closest to us in terms of geography and size. Some of the other airports like Des Moines, Iowa, Charleston, South Carolina, Grand Rapids, they are more central, middle of the country, and so are more likely, in my opinion, to have more nonstop destinations just because of their geography. And that concludes my report, Madam Chair, and I would be happy to answer questions for you.
Maybe I missed this, but with cell phone waiting area, when that opens, what's kind of the intention for that?
We are evaluating that to determine what will be the best use for that lane going forward. We're looking at if we maybe put oversized buses there for when they're picking up groups and tour groups and teams and that sort of thing. So we haven't made a final decision about what the use of that lane will be, or if we'll just block it off.
The peer group, we have growing. And when, I mean, do we want to outgrow it? What's the process for?
Well, this is our own internal peer group that we set. And so we certainly can look at other groups, and I can bring a list to commission as far as who do we think other peers will be. I think Omaha, maybe. We always like to have an aspirational city. There's a pretty big gap between us and Charleston. So I don't know, I'd have to go back and look at my list of airports. I wanna say we're tracking closely to Richmond. Virginia, is pretty close to us. Perhaps. I don't remember off the top of my head, but Reno is certainly still close. And I think is a good comparison because of the geography. Spokane, again, the geography, but maybe we should look at changing some of those.
I don't know if that's a trend yet, but it's something to look at.
Well, and some of these other airports are also receiving some pretty substantial service with, for example, Breeze starting air service. They're a low-cost carrier, but they're more focused, today they're more focused on the East Coast than the West Coast. So some of our counterparts in places like Providence and Manchester, they may actually see increases in their travel. So I don't know that we need to take a look at it, but we'll look at it and maybe see if it makes sense to add some other. If there's some that make sense to remove and if it makes sense to add others in. Thank you.
So I was surprised that the population figure for Boise was 820,000 versus quite a bit smaller for Reno and Spokane, like 500,000 for Reno. And I just wondered, is that a correct figure at 820?
I'm not sure where that number comes from our consultants. Are you?
MSA population in the first column. Says
I-
82134 for Boise, right?
I think it depends on what's included in the population. I know in Spokane, for example, they changed the way they counted their population changed because it used to include northern Idaho and now it does not. So I think it depends, is the question. Is the answer to your question. It depends on which sub-communities you're including as part of that MSA. And Reno, I don't know what their population is off the top of my head, but I know Spokane, their population and the way that their population is calculated changed. But Reno, I don't know what their population is off the top of my head, but I can check. I suspect they have far more tourism than we do.
But you feel that the 820 is right?
The 820 is right. In fact, I think if anything, it's low. I think that's probably, I think our catchment area is higher than that. I think our catchment area is over 900,000. Because our catchment area, if you think about it, goes out quite a ways. Like you wouldn't, for example, include McCall in our MSA or Ontario in our MSA, but all of those people are gonna fly from Boise. So I think.
Right.
I think. If anything, our MSA is understated in this particular.
Yes. Thank you, Rebecca.
All right.
Moving on, we have commissioner comment. Bill, do you want to start with that?
I don't think I have anything other than sorry to see Mayor Ann Colas go, resign.
I think we all are. We're gonna miss him for sure.
Yeah, so much to say. No, I'm just first, I want to say congratulations to all the long-term employees here, and that just goes a lot to the leadership, not only from Rebecca, but all the managers that are overseeing everyone here. Longevity is awesome, and I can't believe like some of the names that I recognize that have been here that long. It's like goes by fast. So congratulations for that. And then I was actually traveling during the global tech outage, and I just wanted to compliment the airlines. I happened to be on Delta. I was coming from Tampa the day back on that Friday. Flew through Atlanta and on the nonstop, and I got in with my luggage. So this airport really showed well. Atlanta was crazy. It was probably the busiest I've ever seen it. But we all made it. And so, just wanted to commend, I know that airlines probably got a lot of customers not so happy with them, which was not their fault, as you mentioned, but it was it worked. It ended up working. And then we just got done with the meetings today, live event, industry event. I wanted to thank Sean for coming out. With them, we had about 100 peers here as well as meeting planners. So a lot of first timers to Boise. They're flying out today, and the airport experience has been great. You know, very easy. Lots of comments about how close our airport is to downtown, and yeah, it's been a great week. And I think that's all. Thank you.
So in June and July, I had both domestic and international travel. I was Seoul, Korea, and then Athens, Greece, and then Houston, Seattle, Denver. Really uneventful except for Houston, sadly. I usually travel Delta, United, Alaska. Those are my sort of preferred. Had some miles on American. They canceled the flight from Boise to Dallas. So I had to rebook, and last minute, of course, so I got to buy an expensive ticket. Coming back through Houston Airport and landing on the airport, I have to say, it's gotta be the worst airport in the planet. I mean, it is awful. And I'm standing there and I'm walking through and I'm trying to do clear TSA pre-check, which is the longest line because they were understaffed and they were processing 2 people at a time at Houston Airport. So I missed my flight. I mean, it was just awful. And I'm sitting there thinking, this isn't that hard. Rebecca and her team have figured this out and they do extraordinarily well. Why is it such a disaster? And it has to be leadership, management, priorities. It's a very wealthy community. I mean, it's not like Houston doesn't have money. So anyway, that was what was going through my mind, is feeling very grateful for being in a community where this is a priority for all of us who travel a lot. And even those of us who travel occasionally, we all get the benefit. I want to second your comments about recognizing tenured years of service. It is in that collective wisdom in an organization that organizations like this continue to thrive. There's a lot of value in sort of the storytellers, the continuity. I'm sure, Michelle, you would have amazing stories to tell about when you first started and the way it was several directors ago. And also congratulations to the promotions. I think it's wonderful to promote from within whenever we're able to do that and create loyalty and personal growth, so people don't feel compelled to leave for that growth. So kudos for that. Thank you very much.
Chair, I'd like to echo gratitude for this team, all that you do we are the most regionally isolated city of our size, and to be able to have those really important connections to our friends, family, business is so important, and have it done really smoothly. A couple of members of the mayor's office, staff, and myself had the opportunity to take a tour with Alex Everman and Sean Briggs last month, and that was so neat to be able to see all the little things that add up into this really smooth operation. And it was very clear to me that one of the really special X factors of this team is the relationships that are built between staff and all of our partners, and really appreciate all the energy that's put into that by each and every one of you to make this such a great airport. I have been waxing nostalgic recently, so I decided to bring a piece of history in. I didn't know there was already one in the case out here, so I'm glad to see that. Otherwise, I've offered this. I got this from a friend a few years ago, Andrea, and I've been noticing the Washington State and the University of Washington playing over my home quite a bit recently, so I wanted to bring a little decor today. So that's what this is. Go Broncos.
Yeah, I want to echo, we're gonna miss Mary Nancolis, and congrats, Michelle, that's awesome. It's longevity seems to be a bygone era these days, so it's really lovely to have that here at the airport. And congrats, I know John O'Donnell is not here, but his promotion is definitely noteworthy, and he's definitely worthy of the promotion. As you know, from a pilot standpoint, it's been smoky, lots of smoke airplane or fire airplanes going around. The smoke affects everybody. I just want to crawl into a hole and hibernate like the inversions of January, but hoping that that ends here pretty soon. Runway closure has definitely affected pilots, but the tower is doing a really good job of sequencing people, and I know they've got a lot of pressure on them to get people out. A lot of impatient pilots who always want to go first, so, to go to the tower. So. And construction seems to be progressing. I don't can't hiding. It's- Construction seems to be progressing, so it looks like things are getting done, and it's much.
That's for trying.
I feel sad for the guys that are out there under the little umbrella, you know, with in the 120-degree sun, waiting for the trucks to go by and stuff. So there's a lot of people out there working hard and long hours in the sun and heat and stuff. So that's a hard job. So that's all I have. Anything else? We can move on after that. I think we've got a presentation from the public art program.
So we have a presentation today from our public arts program to give us an update on some of the things that they're working on behalf of the airport. So I'm going to turn it over to my counterpart, the Director of Arts and History, Jen Stevens, and she can introduce her team.
Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, Director. Thank you for having us today. You may remember about a year ago, we came before you. It was me and my team member Tilly Bubb, and we talked about the Master Arts Plan that the City Council had adopted at that point. And I think there was a lot of excitement among the commissioners to talk about and think about how the art program in the airport could catch up with all the amazing work that Rebecca and her team have been doing with regard to all the things she just covered. And so here we are a year later, and we're coming to give you an update. So last year, in advance of budget time, Rebecca and I worked together with the mayor's office to create a spot to hire somebody to actually work on implementing the plan. And so I am very pleased today to introduce two people that are on my team. Stephanie Johnson is the manager of the public art program within the Department of Arts and History. And she's here today with Savannah Shayon, who came to us for this position and is working collaboratively with the airport and with Arts and History under the direction of Beth Sumner. And that has been so far a really successful partnership. Savannah is officially an employee of the airport, but is working closely with Arts and History because the art program throughout the city of Boise is all about placemaking and all about making sure that the second somebody lands at the Boise airport, they have an understanding of the city's identity and what we stand for and what our values are. And the same way, when they leave, the last thing we want them to see from the airport are those same values so that we make a lasting impression. So it's a really important collaborative effort because even though Savannah works for the airport, we want to make sure that the art and the cultural things that we're going to be doing here at the airport are consistent with what we're doing throughout the city so that there's a consistent message and a consistent set of art and values that are displayed. So Stephanie and Savannah are going to show you a little bit about that today and talk about some of the specifics. And again, I just want to thank you so much for having us today. And with that, I'll turn it over to Stephanie.
Good morning, I'm Stephanie Johnson. I'm the Public Art Program Manager. I'm just going to give a quick overview of the Public Art Program and what public art is and what it's for. So public art is simply put art in public space funded by public money with public process. So we do that through anything from public art selection panels to an open application process with artists through an RFQ or an RFP. We do surveys. Savannah's probably going to implement some surveys with the projects coming up here. And our goal again is to really emphasize the public in that process. So we're centering community input, we're centering community engagement all throughout the process. And the public art team primarily acts as project managers throughout these. We're serving as the conduit between the community for whom the artwork is for, and the artists, stakeholders, and contractors who are executing on the project. And then I've got an image there of our pink tree, actually known as Pink Tree, but it's called Gentle Breeze, downtown. So public art is kind of a visual anchor and a result of creative placemaking. And this approach aims to bring stakeholders together to increase vibrancy and improve economic conditions and build capacity among residents to take ownership of their communities. So it's acting as a visual anchor that reflects the identity and values of a community or place, often a huge part of creative placemaking again. So there's some images of examples of notable public artworks around our region. And so that's what we're gonna do here at the airport. We're implementing an intentional public art program here at the airport that's going to give us an iconic visual identity, hopefully similar to these couple of artworks here. That flamingo is by Matthew Mazzotta, who did Gentle Breeze, which is the pink tree. And I think that's such a cool example of placemaking in an airport, right? Where you're bringing in something iconic of a location. People are gonna know exactly, like, we're in Tampa, you know, you're in Florida when you see a flamingo. And then of course, the Mustang at the Denver airport that has quite a cult following. And then a snapshot that doesn't show up very well on that screen, but that's just a snapshot of the public art process. We go from identifying the project, identifying budget, themes, location where the artwork's going to be installed, to developing the whole project. We get public input before we release a call for art that artists can apply to. And then we bring together a panel for selection that helps select what artist gets to do the project, contract the artist. The artist comes on, designs and proposes, and then refines that proposal for final approval. It goes through commission, Arts and History Commission, Airport Commission, and City Council, and then engineering. And then we finally get to implement it, and the artist fabricates it, and then we install it, and then we celebrate it. I'm going to turn it over to Savannah.
So this is kind of the exciting part. This is where you guys will get to come in. You know, we will invite panelists that will be community members. We'll also have artists, but we'll also have an airport commissioner and an arts and history commissioner. So hopefully you guys will see this as an opportunity to sort of represent the community, represent the commission, and serve on this panel and bring it back to your fellow commissioners so that you can advocate for it. Part of that work will be identifying themes, goals, objectives that will inform the RFQ. And we will put out an RFQ first, and then when we receive those, go through those applications and then release an RFP to get like proposals from finalists, artists who we think are going to really embody what we're looking for when it comes to identifying the public image, the artistic image of Boise. Part of your work will be reviewing and scoring applications. We will provide you a rubric to do that, so you're not going to be going in blind. You'll select an artist, provide some project feedback, and then, as I said, advocate for the project is a really big part. We hope that you take it back to your families, your community, and tell people all the exciting things that are going on at the airport with public art. I realize you can't read that at all, so I will read to you. This is a little bit about what the panel process is going to look like. It's sort of, for a larger project, maybe an 8 to 10 hour time commitment over several months, not all at once. And smaller projects will be less than that. We'll go through an orientation meeting, some focus group discussions where We talk about what's important to people who live in Boise, what you want this art to look like, release the RFQ. And then on your own time, you'll be reviewing panel applications. So maybe 2 to 3, 3 to 5 hours. It does depend on how many applications come in. You'll discuss scores in another meeting, interview some finalists that we've selected, discuss that final selection, and then go through final design review. So you will be involved every step of the way. Your input will be asked for in all of these meetings. These are our upcoming projects. I will have images on the next slides. I'm sure you've heard all about the Conrack, but there is going to be an exciting public art piece. In addition, we're going to have a vinyl mesh mural. And then in the soon to be updated family restrooms in Concourse B, we'll be doing an installation on that external wall. And we are still in the, project build phase of these. So we're not doing anything immediately. We're not building the art right now. But in the next few months, we will be holding some orientation meetings, and you might be receiving an email from me about asking you to serve on that panel as a representative of the Airport Commission. So this is just an example. Please note the really big red letters that say this is only an example. But this is a really wonderful precedent project that we found in our research for what we could possibly put on the east facade of the Conrack. What's nice is this is a really beautiful marriage between public art and engineering. So the engineering team said that there needs to be airflow through there because it is going to be a parking garage. It's where we found this mesh. And it also provides an opportunity for a public artist to design something which will be screen printed onto this mesh. So really wonderful, problem solving solution for everybody. Also, again, please note the really big red letters that say these are only examples. We are not even using these as inspiration, but I do hope that they show you what public art can be, how different it can be, how exciting and colorful it can be. The reason we're using these as good examples for this project is because that external wall of the family restrooms in Concourse B is just a big blank wall, and we would like it to be a little bit more exciting. All of these projects, all of these artists, they took in the space and they responded to the prompts. They responded to the community. They did a little bit of community involvement, and that is a lot of the times what we like to see with our public artists. They really care about what's going on here. Sometimes they're from Boise, sometimes they're not. Matthew Mazzotta is not, but he created a really wonderful iconic image of Boise. We're hoping to bring that to the airport as well. And this is going to be my last slide because I know we do have limited time. But just a reminder that public art is here in the airport to support the airport. So it supports the airport's mission. We're bringing these two departments together in a really wonderful collaboration so that we can display Boise and we can display it to the rest of Idaho, the rest of the nation, the rest of the world. So when people come here, they say, well, I saw that really beautiful iconic piece in the airport, and that's how I knew I was in Boise. That's how I know that these people care about their city and their community. Some of the guiding questions that we'll be asking both in surveys and to people who sit on the selection panel is, what's unique about Boise? When you come here, what is the first thing you think of? Basically answering the so what question. Like, why are we putting art in the airport? It has to mean something if we're spending all this money on it. And we're hoping that we can give people those guiding questions so that they come out with good information of saying, this isn't Portland, this isn't Seattle, this isn't Salt Lake, this is Boise. We hope that the public art will do that, and you guys will be interested in serving on a selection panel in the next few months.
So we'll just wait to hear from you for next steps.
Yes, and Rebecca is going to connect us over email so that you guys don't just get a random person in your inbox and don't know who I am. But I will have more information once we sort of build out what we want these meetings to look like, and you'll have the opportunity to say you have the time or you don't have the time, you're interested, you're uninterested in serving on a panel.
And are you okay with like more than, one commission member for one project and then another commission member for the next? Not
Yeah.
just one person for the whole thing, but.
Generally, we would like to see some different commissioners so that we could have, different input, different backgrounds, so you guys can all be involved. It's also a really good just representation of the work that you do at the airport to say that several of you are interested in serving on a panel and not just one.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Yes, of course.
You probably said it and I missed it. Where's the big piece going?
So on the Conrack, on that consolidated, the rental car facility, on the east facade, there's going to be sort of just like a blank wall that was identified as an opportunity for public art. And we'll build a substrate, have that attached to the facade, and then the murals will be installed onto that. So it will cover the entire east facade of the rental car facility.
So it'll be.
Madam Chair, I think the question is more like the flamingo and the
Oh, the
mustang,
iconic
where
one.
is that gonna be
Yeah.
in the airport?
Thank you.
Right?
Yeah,
It's gonna be-
thank
I
you.
just saw the flamingo and I thought about
Right.
Boise.
When do we get that?
Tomorrow. That might take a little bit longer. I promise it won't be a flamingo, but I've also promised it won't be a potato. But we haven't identified exactly where it's gonna go. It might be in, the incoming concourse, it might be following some new renovations. But what's nice is that I do work so closely with the engineering team so that I can be involved, at the ground level of all that construction, so we can identify a place together and say, this will have the biggest impact. The money that we're spending will mean the most here, the most amount of people will see it. But we don't have a specific location there. It'll probably be, in the next couple of years that we'll be making that decision. Once more construction starts happening, we'll be able to sort of narrow down the final location.
I assume it's after the expansion, right? That's where it's identified.
Yes, yeah, probably. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, that's exciting. Something different. Thank you for coming. I think we're moving on to questions and comments. This is questions and comments from the public, you guys and anybody else online. So if there are anybody who's
Not see anyone with their hand raised.
all right, speak now. Well, with that, I think we're a little past 10, but all things considered, it's we're early. It's a late start, so I think we need a motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair, I move that this meeting of the Boise Airport be adjourned.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Thank you for coming. We'll see you next month.